everybody? So, it's that time again. Cheers. Coffee, tea, whatever you like. But, so, I was thinking, what can I talk about that's happened in the past 24 hours? And what I noticed is that yesterday, when I did my video regarding the game devs, right? You know, Ryan getting involved in all these sorts of things. What I was wondering about is basically, it seems to me that a lot of the same concerns keep coming up from people posting, right? You know, a lot of it is hit reg, is VAC, it's these sorts of things, like the devs aren't doing anything, right? And so I don't feel like it's such a black and white situation. And obviously, judging by the title, I think you guys are going to know where I go with this. I was thinking about just talking a little bit about VAC. Now, I'm not a cheat developer, don't really know any cheat developers, not really super knowledgeable on the deep stuff, but I do have a little bit of a surface knowledge, and I also have been able to talk a little bit to the devs in the past and got their point of view a little bit, or as they tried to explain it to me, like what is actually going on behind it. So I kind of wanted to just sit and think a little bit about what exactly the devs are doing and what are they capable of doing to counteract this VAC problem, because it seems to me like, at least the outspoken minority, right, there are quite a few of them, it seems, on Reddit, seem to think that, the devs, it's a black and white issue, and that, the devs aren't doing fuck all about VAC. They're just leaving it broken on purpose, and they don't care if there are hackers in the game. Which, again, I feel like we need to cut the devs just a little bit of slack on this and try and look at it differently, right? So I think it's a much more gray area than people are making it sound, right? It's not a black and white sort of scenario where it's like they flip a switch and all of a sudden VAC becomes some crazy, just hack stopper and just bans everybody, half the community, because half of the community are obviously hacking, right? Every time you come around that corner, that guy just insta-dinks you, obviously hacking, right? That guy can't be that good, can't have predicted you or heard that you were coming or game sense. Nah, none of that. Obviously hacking. So, apart from that, yeah. I think it's a much more gray area. I think that we need to think a little bit more about like what the kind of work that goes into it. And so a couple of majors ago, when I brought this up with the Valve devs, like, okay, there's a big concern about hacking right now in the community. Can you give me some insight on what's going on behind the scenes with you guys? And the first thing they say is that it's an arms race. You have to view it as an arms race right now. It's an ongoing battle that never ends. Because keep in mind, it's obviously a profitable thing to do to develop hacks. These developers, they're clearly making money off of it, or they wouldn't do it, right? And so there's something there. But it's also just an arms race in the sense that the other analogy that they made is look at just stones, right? You're on a beach, right? And there's just a bunch of stones covering the ground, right? And so the hacker is constantly trying to find some kind of weakness in your system, in your code, and they're going to try and hide it under this stone, right? And so the devs, they have to, when a hack comes in and it's obvious there's a hack, okay, they have to kind of go on this beach and just start looking through these stones and start saying, okay, to get this result, where could they make a change? Under this rock? Okay, no, not there. Under this rock? No. Okay, here, under this rock, right? And they find it, they make the change, we might have a VAC wave come through, but then that's where it's this constant back and forth battle between the developers who are trying to stop the hackers and the hackers who are obviously developing the cheats, is that, boom, okay, you catch them. All they need to do at that point then is, right, look for another stone to hide it under. And then, oh, okay, so now the devs can maybe think, right, okay, we've checked under this stone, but then there's all these other stones that we have to look, okay, back to checking under stones, right? And it's this constant process. It's this running battle between the developers and the cheaters and the hack developers, right, on where can you hide this invasive software? And it's just constant and it's nonstop, right? And so you have to keep that in mind. It's not as easy as just like lock down, because there's also other things to consider, right? This was actually from an article. I couldn't find it again. I was really frustrated. I was looking for it last night, but an article I remember reading about a year ago of a man who was involved in anti-hack software, right, and how to block these people. And there's all sorts of other concerns that has to go into it as well for the guys who are working on VAC, right? If you want VAC to be like this tip-top sort of thing, okay, how invasive can you be with the user's PC? Can you know, how many, basically, like how much of the PC can you keep track of that the user will feel comfortable with you keeping track of, obviously, because the deeper you go, like ESEA, right, who actually get really deep and check a lot of different things that's on your PC, things that you may not even know that they're checking, you know, they're looking all over the place for these hacks, which is why obviously their anti-cheat is a bit better, right, is because they're willing to, you know, you agree to allow them to go that deep, right? And so can VAC do that? Can they go and check all of these different processes that are happening in your PC with your permission? The other thing is, the more powerful the anti-cheat gets, from what I understand, the more demand there is on your PC. We used to have this software called ESL Wire, right? And it was a nightmare. Because it was a nightmare back when, this was a couple of years ago, maybe a year and a half or so, when we were still running tournaments. The qualifiers had to happen with this ESL Wire anti-cheat sort of scenario, and half the players' PCs would just die using it. It was so demanding on the PCs because it was checking all these processes and everything, that you know, half the PCs would crash, and we'd every halftime, or just like we'd have to have pauses, like 5 pauses a half, or then in the halftime, some like 3 guys have to go reboot their PCs because that restarts the process with the ESL Wire so they can actually play, because their frames are dropping the longer the game goes, because this software is taking up so much of their PC's processing power. You know, it was a real hassle to use, right? And so you guys have to think, like, there's a bunch of different things that go into these anti-cheats. And so I don't think that the Valve devs, you know, are obviously not just going to say, right, you know, we're fine with cheaters being in our game, because that's insane, right? You know, they might be thinking, okay, we're fine to allow them to be here until we can catch what it is that they're doing, and then we're going to strategically plan around when we're going to get the ban going so we can get as much of them as possible. I think that could be reasonable. There's also the opportunity cost involved of, you know, sinking that much time into trying to find the hackers as well, or the developers, right? It's very tricky stuff. So I mean, I think it's just a really complex issue that people seem, or right, people just seem to feel happy to just say, right, no, this is, you know, fix this, and it should be done in a week. And it's just like, otherwise you don't care about us, right? And I'm just thinking, like, come on, you have to calm down a little bit, right? You know, it's a very complex issue that you're talking about here. They're obviously doing things to try and have an impact on this. And some of these things, I mean, are not invasive, right? That aren't, they aren't, you know, built on a VAC. They aren't actually trying to get in on that. Instead, they've started to add things like prime matchmaking, right? You know, they're trying to add barriers to entry to make it more difficult or less enticing, right, to hack. So remember, we already have, you know, the rank system that's been implemented, right? And if you want to queue into competitive matchmaking, you have to get your account up to a certain rank before you can start queuing competitive, unless you're stacking with a full 5 stack or something along those lines. I mean, so already one barrier of entry. So that's going to make it more difficult for some guy using a cheap hack or a free hack or whatever. He got his last account banned, boom, he can just buy a new one and get right into the game. No, he has to go through that process a little bit. Now, they've even added one that I really like, actually, that I think is very cool, is prime matchmaking, which means, you know, you have to tie your phone number to your account. And so there's another barrier there. It's just like, okay, so you're going to really make this your account, and you're going to make it clear that you're willing to sacrifice a lot of time to make this your account and basically invest in it. You want to keep it safe. And so that opens up the door to prime matchmaking, where you can matchmake with other people who have gone through this process, right? And it's not a super difficult process. I mean, if you're legit, if you're on the level, or if you're just, you know, you get a little bit more informed, you know, you figure out, oh, there's prime matchmaking, a couple clicks of a button, my phone number's tied to my account now. Okay, now I have access to prime matchmaking. There's another barrier of entry to the hackers, you know, being able to mess with me, right? And so apart from VAC and like trying to track down these cheat developers who are always, you know, one step ahead, right? Because they're constantly just tweaking little things to dodge VAC, and then, okay, we got to figure out what the tweak is, and then it's just this back and forth struggle nonstop. Just sounds like a nightmare to me, right? Okay, now they're trying to find other ways that just to make it a bit more difficult, and make it a bit more difficult. I mean, when I play prime matchmaking, for example, I mean, obviously I haven't had too much time to play lately, but I mean, the few games that I've played, I've enjoyed. No doubt, and I've had a good time. I feel like I haven't really run into that many hackers. And then I played a non-prime matchmaking game the other day, had a spin botter in there. But, you know, that's the thing. Sometimes, I mean, most matchmaking games I'm playing, I don't feel like I'm running into somebody who's obviously hacking or anything like that. But then obviously you get the blatant, you know, guy, and it's just like, okay, well, right, deep breath, and then keep moving on. But, I mean, let me see. The other thing to consider, I mean, is obviously you have these like free hacks basically that are just completely open up to the public, and those are most likely the ones that are going to get nabbed, right? But then obviously you have what's really tricky for the developers is when it's a smaller pool of people using the hack, and the smaller that pool gets, then I'm not trying to, I mean, Thorne's probably talked about this in the past a little bit, but I'm not trying to freak people out, but it's just like, the smaller the pool gets, the more difficult it's obviously going to be to catch that hack, because less people are going to be making, or it's possible for less mistakes to happen if the less people are involved. And so there's also two different layers to this, and I think that Valve have made it pretty clear, at least over the past, I mean, I feel like for quite some time now, they've been taking steps towards trying to limit the ability that people have to hack in the game, just from setting barriers to entry. Now, this might backfire a little bit because it makes it a little bit more difficult for just the casual guy to come in and play. But at the same time, it is trying to make it a bit more stable for those who are already in the space, right, and who are already committed. Then it's just a couple of clicks. Oh, you're in a prime matchmaking. You're already looking better. And then I just think that we have to cut them just a little bit of slack, because they are clearly working on it. There's still people, big VAC waves coming in where, they're catching these guys. And so, let's not just go pitchfork mode and just completely write off their efforts. It's definitely a gray thing that I think requires a little bit of patience on our part, because it just sounds like this giant war to me, and it's just nightmare. So there we go. Quick rambling thoughts on that real quick. And I'll see you guys on Monday next time I'm in the office. Peace.